Okay, hold on, we're not live everywhere.
You are.
Oh, we're gonna just have to get
Live on YouTube.
live on Facebook
and Instagram. So we might have to speak a
With
little
who?
since this is so far away.
Well,
All
you know
right.
what?
That's gonna be a
Unfortunately,
problem
I'm
for
so
all
sad that we
four
have
of us.
such mild-tempered, soft-spoken.
I don't think we're gonna have a problem with the audio this go around because in the Texans for Vaccine Choice headquarters, I am so excited to welcome our very own Texan. Am I allowed?
That's right.
You are
I'm
a
No,
Texan.
he's a Californian still.
Yeah, which was evident when you showed up in flip-flops last night. I was like, I'm not sure you got the message. You're in Texas. But we just welcome Mr. Del Bigtree
Yay.
to the TFPC headquarters. So welcome to
Thank
North
you.
Texas. How does it feel to be here?
I'm glad you asked that. The truth is, I just drove 3 hours here really for one reason. We could have done this by Skype or a million other things, but I want to say to you, as California was collapsing and I was really starting to have trouble with how our laws were moving, what was going on, I'd been traveling all over the country trying to figure out where I wanted to live. And, you know, there's a lot of great states out there, but honestly, Texas really spoke to me. Not just because of where the laws are at, which you have fought so hard to hold on to, you know, many in this group, but that when I was looking around the country, you have one of the best organized approaches to dealing with politics around these subjects of medical freedom. And that's something you have to look at, right? What is the long-term value if I'm going to move my family to try and be safer? I don't think it's going to last forever. I think we have the fight of our lives coming up.
Yeah.
But who do I want standing next to me as I fight to protect my children and their health? And so watching this election, the one thing that I can proudly say is that Texas really did show up, held strong on the idea. And let's make no bones about it. This entire election became about a supposed pandemic and a disease. So it's not like we are like thinking it's all about us. It truly was about us. It's about the topics that we've been discussing for years, you've been fighting for. And if there is a mandate, what we now know is 50% of this country now agrees with us, which is up from the 10 to 15% of us that were having conversations like this 4 years ago. We're in a much different place, but Texas really, really held strong in the face of this. And I think that that's a testament to the work that you've done to get politicians in Texas to be looking at these topics, at least from a little bit higher vantage point. It's not perfect. We have work to do, but it was a very exciting moment when we were all terrified. We heard Texas is going blue. And I also want to give a shout out, by the way, to all of the Californians that are moving here. I was saying to someone that grew up in Texas, in Austin, where we're at, I said, does it freak you out all the Californians coming?
Mm-hmm.
I said, the first wave was terrible. You guys, the second wave, keep them coming.
No offense, we moved here 4 years ago.
I am so glad that you chose to go this route to open up the discussion because number one, it means a lot to all of us in this office who have worked so hard for Texas. I've been a little doom and gloom the last few years, and I have to tell you, in our conversations, we're friends. We speak very candidly with each other, and y'all came from California, and you had this enthusiasm, and I was so excited for you, but I've been a little bit, doom and gloom, a little bit of funk, because last legislative session, I could see what was happening. And to your point, in Texas, we love to say, don't California my Texas. But that wasn't the issue. Sure, money was pouring in from all across the country to flip this state. But it wasn't the medical refugees moving here were the problem. Because they're coming in and they're saying, what can we do? How do we get involved? We've lived under this tyranny. We don't want to live this way. It was the very complacent, more moderate to progressive Republicans who were the obstacle for us or who were fighting back or filing the legislation. And when you're sitting down in that Capitol building, you see this going on and a lot of people unaware of the dynamic. I was pretty darn negative. And we had a lot of conversations, and I think we were viewing things totally differently. But we did win. And we know we have an uphill battle, but we're on the same page. And just to hear you reiterate that Texas, we've at least made it this far.
Oh, he says, I know I made the right choice.
Yes. And we're so glad that you're here. But we can't completely throw our California people under the bus here. So we are back with Dr. Bob, Melissa, Bigtree. And right before we sat down and started this conversation, it was like, well, what are we going to talk about? Because I've been talking all day. We got a lot of really great conversations. So let's open it up. We're here in Texas. Where do we want to start? Everyone's look at this. I put them on, and they're like, we had lunch, and now it's time to take a break.
So, well, how about this? How about we start this? What happens if Biden wins this election? What does this mean for?
Man, you went there. I gave an open mic, and you went there.
Because I want to know what this means for the medical freedom movement. What does this mean for our fight against the COVID vaccine as a mandatory thing? What does this mean for our society in general? What kind of shift should we expect to see, and how will that affect the momentum that we've been creating over these last several months with all of the people questioning what's happening?
So there was something that has stuck out to me several months ago in one of the presidential debates that really, literally has kept me up at night. And it was when Biden said, we need social workers in every home. And actually, one of my CPS advocates over there, you can just see the look on her face, horrified by this thought. And as a parental rights advocate, as somebody who daily our phone rings with families whose children can't get released from the hospital because, maybe they wanted to forgo the hepatitis B, or they have a medically complex child and, maybe failure to thrive, and they don't have answers for that, and the hospital is holding them hostage. That idea that we need government officials in our homes because we're not confident enough, we don't know what we're doing, we're not the experts, is terrifying to me. So I do think we're hearing very distinct messages amongst party lines as far as the role of parents in our choices.
Right, yeah, no, I don't really understand that, because I agree, government overreach and government interference in family and parental decisions and family medical decisions and who gets to decide medical care for your children and for yourself. Interference in that seems to be very much a Democratic policy. And it seems to be, for the most part, if not completely, Democratic politicians that are putting forth those kinds of policies. But I suspect if you were to ask most Democratic voters, most parents who have children, but they're registered Democrats and they support the general Democratic Party ideals, I suspect most families would not agree with that part of the Democratic agenda. And most families, I think, want to have total authority and control over the health of their children, be able to make those decisions. And so that fact should really wake up, I think, some Democratic parents that your party might not have your and your children's best interest in mind in this particular area. You might agree with everything else, but not in this area. And one horrible bill in California that really sort of shines a huge light on this is a so-called children's rights bill that Senator Pan put forth in California, I think 2 years ago, after he passed the mandatory vaccine bill in California. His very next step was a children's rights bill. It basically said, us as a California government have the right to supersede parents in the medical decisions for your children. Some parents aren't making the right medical choices for their children. All children have the right to good medical choices, and so us as a government are going to take that over when we see fit. Now, they can maybe already do that in cases of child abuse, but this bill allowed the government to do it in the cases of medical care, medical decisions. And that should scare every parent. That bill went nowhere. Even a lot of Democratic legislators said, no, thank you, Senator Pan. yeah, we signed up for your mandatory vaccine bill, but we're not signing up for, hey, let's just take over, parental rights bill. So it didn't go anywhere, which, thank God it didn't go anywhere. But just the fact that someone would put forth such a ludicrous bill should wake up, I think, every American who's a parent who believes in parental rights and freedom and medical choice, et cetera. That shouldn't be a party line issue. And I feel like when you talk about parents, it's not a party line issue. It's just, I think everyone agrees when you're a parent. So if you're in that situation, the Democratic Party, start talking to your Democratic legislators and tell them you have a problem with that if you do, so that we don't start to have these family rights taken away.
Well, it's been very interesting because you've actually been very outspoken on this. And one of the things I love about having you here in Texas is you do have a level of influence, especially amongst the Democrat members of Texans for vaccine choice. So many of them, although very friendly with us and love us, they've been frustrated because we've worked so closely with Republicans. And no matter how much we try to assure them that we've been trying to work with the Democrat Party, they want nothing to do with it. And not only do they want nothing to do with it, we have video recordings of being chased out of their conventions. This year, they didn't even allow us. Well, they ended up canceling the convention. But when we submitted our application, they wouldn't even allow our presence there. But it's fascinating to me because the more you speak about your experience and growing up and what your politics were and what the changing or how things changed for you, I have noticed a shift for a lot of our members because they need to feel validated in where they are coming from. So can you share about your experience?
Well, yeah, let me first say I'm sitting here as Del Bigtree and not as, my nonprofit. One of the big difficulties I have is that as a nonprofit, I can't get into the politics of this. And I see people get frustrated when they're watching the Highwire. Why don't you just come out and say it? Well, I can't. I'm giving you all of the scientific reasons of what you should be looking at and whoever you're going to vote for. But, technically I can't get involved in that. It's something that's, is a growing frustration and maybe a shift in my future. I mean, maybe I try to figure out how I can change business models because it's going to get to be more and more problematic. And I think one of the things that the way to look at this is true. I grew up, was a rabid, progressive, liberal Democrat from Boulder, Colorado. I'm an environmentalist. I still believe in trying to keep our water clean, our air clean, all of those things. But this issue really has changed my life. I say mostly I'm politically marooned, but I can certainly say I'm marooned from the Democrat Party now. And I think that for me, at a certain point, and look, I've done it. I have walked, Bobby Kennedy and I have walked with him through DC, through, the Senate and the Congress, trying to sit down with people. And it is a very shocking experience to sit down with a Republican that many times doesn't understand, isn't into the science or whatever, but there's like an openness to understand this based on, a right to body autonomy, right to your own choices, parental rights, things like that, and they're listening. And then you can start getting into the science and the dangers of vaccines. And then you can go into an office of a Democrat, and it's like I am only sitting here because I have to, maybe because I'm with Bobby or something, and you can tell everything in their eyes is I am not listening to you. And it doesn't matter. And what's crazy is even the assistants, when you go into whatever they call their little, young, what do they call them? Page, their aides. Even if it's an aide, a kid, I remember, sitting there with a Republican aide, and the kid's listening. Like, okay, it's taking notes. And this kid's like, then they go to a Democrat's office, and the kid's like condescending towards me or Bobby Kennedy. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't even sit here and listen to what we're talking about. And so that wall is really shocking and it's dangerous. Now, to Bobby's credit, I know I've been watching online, but it's a huge conversation. Why is Bobby not coming out against, Democrats? I don't know if he wants to be speaking for him, but I do want to say, I've asked him myself. And I think he makes a great point. We can't do this alone, right? It's true. My party right now is not getting this issue. But that doesn't mean I leave my party. It means I have a job to transform that party. And as a Kennedy, I get that's also sort of a branded mission in the family. So I think it's great. I think we all have got to continue to never give up on reaching everyone we can. But there is a very, and I would disagree with you in some ways, in that one of the things we hear, I've sat with Democratic strategists or lobbyists, especially in California, saying, don't say parental rights. It just sets off Democrats. They don't like hearing parental rights. They don't want to hear constitutional rights. Like, these aren't things that are good buzzwords for our people. And I think part of it, when I look at, when you start making the shift out of being a Democrat, it starts with the party left. I know, but then that just falls short. And you start recognizing historically, you have to peel yourself away and say, you know what? I always did kind of, and this is what I would boil it down to. If I was going to just try and say what are the two big differences between conservatives and liberals or Democrats, is that I think as a Democrat, I believe people are stupid. I think they're too stupid to make decisions for themselves, therefore the government has to do it for them. And I think when you say parental rights, they never think, you don't mean me. No one's gonna mess with me, I'm a good parent, I go to Whole Foods, my kids are fine. It's that person that's chaining their kid to the bed and abusing them up in, wherever, Podunk, California, the one story like that. It's always that stupid person outside, and the government has to go and take care of them. And they never see it as their own experience. They never see that they're imprisoning themselves. And that's what our founding fathers really warned us, right? If you are giving up a little bit of safety to achieve a little bit of liberty, you'll have neither liberty nor safety. And so that mindset is really baked into, whereas conservatives tend to be like, every man for himself. Stay out of my house, stay out of my bedroom, stay out of my yard. And that has its own flaws. It's really hard to talk science, right? I mean, this is what's so frustrating. Technically, Democrats watch more documentaries. They understand scientific issues like environmental toxins and chemicals. So you would think, it's got to be driving Bob crazy. One of the greatest environmentalists of our time cannot get anyone that's an environmentalist to recognize we are the same toxins we're trying to get out of our fish in our river are being injected into our children. They just not listening. So,
and kind of a side note on that, I'll say one thing I'm kind of disappointed with in our community, that people in our own community get attacked because not everybody agrees with every aspect of something that they believe. And I think we really need to take accountability for this as a movement.
Yeah.
Because I've seen Bobby get attacked for supporting his own family members that just happen to be Democrats. It's like, you guys, we can agree on certain things, not totally align on other things, and that doesn't mean somebody's wrong, controlled opposition against us, whatever. This has really taken a life of its own, and it doesn't represent us well, because you see our movement being divided as soon as somebody doesn't agree on one aspect. We're all very complex individuals. Not everybody's pro-life, not everybody's Christian, not everybody's Republican. We can all agree on informed consent. We can all agree on medical freedom and parental rights. We should be okay with that and not feel the need to attack each other if something's out of line, because we have to be tolerant. We have to be tolerant of different viewpoints. As long as we are allowing choice and we're allowing safety for our children, everything else should be okay to have those different viewpoints. And that's one thing I get really disappointed with in our community, is that we're not allowing for tolerance, but we're asking for it. That doesn't make any sense.
So you bring up a really good point. We were talking about this earlier, how our movement is growing rapidly. And we are getting so many new people who maybe, many of them fully vaccinated, right? Or, really COVID has opened their eyes to a world they didn't know existed. Earlier, I joked about how I sent out a newsletter and I used a few words in it that were very confusing to people who were seeking information about Texans for vaccine choice. And I said, my goodness, I didn't even think about this because this is a new audience that we've never connected with before. They don't know who we are. They don't know what our intentions are. So who are you seeing? How has our movement changed in your experience with COVID?
Well, one point I wanted to make kind of along those lines is similar to your question about what happens if Biden does win the presidency. right now, vaccine choices and probably even a COVID vaccine mandate would be a state power. Like each state gets to make their own, medical legislation. The federal government can't do that. So we have always felt like if a conservative was in power in Washington, that might give us some protection against full, complete vaccine mandates. Now the COVID vaccine is coming, and everyone's wondering, is it going to be a free choice or is it going to be mandated? And President Trump has said it's going to be a free choice. We're not going to mandate it. I don't know what Biden has said along those lines, but what I worry about is if Biden does win the presidency, now a Democratic Party who's very much pro-vaccine mandate in every way possible, are they going to use their federal powers to supersede state powers and mandate COVID vaccine? Are they going to work with states to try to get more states to pass, COVID mandates? And will we lose even, more rights to make a choice on a COVID vaccine? So that's kind of one thing I worry about. What happens? We might lose some federal protections, or they might even come after us using federal powers. Something I worry about.
Just to be clear, what Biden actually has said is, I will treat this exactly like I will treat the mask mandate when I get into office. It is not a federal decision, but I will personally visit with every governor and every mayor and say, you need to pass a mandate on masks.
On a local level.
On a local level. And so he will use the power of government, and God knows and this is the thing, right? We go, oh, well, he's allowed to say that, but what happens in that meeting? When those doors close, we hear about some bridge that needs to be built in your county that, the federal government funds are not going to fund. That type of, horse trading is what makes this whole thing really scary. But and I know we don't have all day. I think that, first of all, I do believe in God, and I've watched miracles from the moment I got involved with facts. I've been very public about a lot of those milestone moments that are just miraculous to me. And I have said very early on that we will never outsmart pharma, we will never outspend pharma. We do not own the television sets of the world the way they did. This is one of the greatest Goliaths. Add in now Silicon Valley is merging. We've got the big tech merging with the drug industry, which is terrifying, and surveillance. All of these things are true. And one of the things that I've just always said is either God is with us or we're screwed. And that means that there's things that I don't fully understand, right? The bigger picture is not mine to understand. I'm simply a vessel doing what I can do every day, taking the next right step. And this pandemic has been one of the greatest gifts of this movement there ever was. We couldn't get people to think about what happens in a vaccine trial to save our lives. Yes, we were having some progress, this incremental progress that was like, and you and I was like, how are we ever going to get there? This pandemic comes along, and everybody, it was the greatest mistake this medical industrial complex ever made. Not only are you going to try and make the sausage in front of the entire population for the first time ever, you locked us in our basements so we couldn't go outside. So one of the things they've always gotten away with, been so busy, and you've been saying, we can't get people to stop and listen to what we have to say. They stopped everybody, sat them in their basements, they all got online and said, well, how does a vaccine trial work? What is a placebo? And now you have, for the first time, the entire population, no matter what side you're on. And then Donald Trump says, I'm going to make this vaccine, rush it out, warp speed. Now every Democrat's like, that's going to be dangerous. Why? You can't beat that. To me, that is something far bigger than us, right?
Well, you said
it's
at the
huge.
beginning of the year, you said to me, 2020 is our year.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was gonna roll like this when you said 2020 is our year. Should I hold you accountable for this?
You can hold the prophecy accountable. We don't know how, right? And I think that just as I've understood, and we've used this pandemic, we will continue to use it, and that's what the headlines say. Anti-vaxxers are using this pandemic to make people afraid of vaccines. You're damn right. You're damn right. They're playing right into our hand. And if we're smart, no matter how this comes out, but in a Biden presidency, we are going to have even more energy of people that are now saying, wait a minute, do I trust this person? you didn't trust the Trump vaccine. Why am I supposed to trust the Biden vaccine? And I think that there are going to be opportunities no matter what. In some ways, maybe even better opportunities, because if Trump is elected, then you will have people that thinks that was the saving grace. Now I'm cool and I can go back to my job and not worry about it. They're going to get apathetic over these issues, thinking I have someone in the White House. I have news for you. No one in the White House is going to fix the problems that we're in.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry is not going home. This takeover of our lives, whatever is driving it, all the social tracking and all of the technologies that are moving in to oppress us are not going home no matter who's president. And so is it possible that Biden incites thinking into what is now 50% of this country to actually step up and do something? If we have 50% of an active group now seeing every move by the president as an attack on their sovereignty, including vaccines, including contact tracing, including forced testing, all those things, we now have an ability to move this needle in a way we were never going to be. 1 year ago, we were nowhere near it. So if that ends up being the outcome, I'm going to say God's will. We will march on, and we are going to march to victory no matter what happens.
I think we should just
I think the fact that we've got a new audience that's here, that kind of goes to my earlier point of being tolerant. We need to understand this movement's growing, and it's growing differently. And you're going to have a lot more politically conservative people that have never heard about vaccine safety issues. And we have to, as a movement, be welcoming and open and tolerant to the wide variety of people that have now been open to this idea of data manipulation and regulatory agency issues. And we need to be gentle with them and understand that this is new and this has got to be so hard for people that have spent their entire life with blinders on, and all of a sudden they're seeing something completely differently now, and it's scary and it's uncomfortable for them. And now this is going to bring up a lot of difficult issues and complex issues for them in their family with the choices they might have made. So we can't come at people and say, yeah, and look at this, you did this totally wrong, this was the wrong way to go. We need to unite with our common ground, which is we don't want the government coming into our lives and dictating the choices that we make, period. Plain and simple, that's the end of it. All the details don't matter.
So let's talk about this for a few minutes. I know we're running out of time here, but I love having these brilliant minds, and I'm not going to pay attention to you right now. They're giving me my countdown timer. I'm going to keep on going.
The countdown timer is so brilliantly, written on paper plates.
You're all our typewriters. Where do we go from here as a movement? We've been doing this for a while. Yes, I know you have. It's been a while. We've been in this fight. Where do we go? I say, where do we go? Part of me sitting here saying, where do we begin? Because everything has changed in 2020. Everything we knew, the way we advocate, the way we message, the way we reach our community has completely changed. I personally reject this new normal. I don't believe, I'm ready to get back to the social connections and the interactions, but our movement has been forever changed by this pandemic. That is undeniable. Where are we going? What do we do from here?
Well, you're going to the same places that we had to go before. You're just going with more tools, more arrows in the quiver, and more passion and more people. But it's still the same thing. We've got to go, and the work that you do, we've got to meet with our politicians, our representatives, and let them know we are watching you now, okay? We are not going to accept a forced COVID vaccine, and by the way, remind every Democrat, if Biden is elected, this is still Trump's vaccine. So if you want to trust it, you go right ahead, right? But we have tools now. This COVID vaccine fear and the amount of information that's been in the media, both through the highway, but mainstream media, CNN saying the danger of rushing a vaccine, talking about how the polio vaccine went wrong. All talking points that we have used are now in mainstream because of how this has been set up. We've got to continue that conversation. I think you've got to stay very focused with the dangers of the COVID-19 vaccine. It has a greater danger in some ways than any of the vaccines we've talked about before. This immune enhancement problem is so terrifying and so capable of ending our species, a mistake like this. And it's a simple tool to make other people afraid and really start thinking about that. I think we build on that. I think you build on the concern over masks. The discussion of masks gets into herd immunity and discussions of, do you really not recognize that just like you have to lift weights to stay in shape, your body has to be breathing in bacteria and viruses all the time in order to stay acclimated. This is a concept that we've got to start getting through to our friends. Your kid is getting sicker and sicker and sicker every day they're wearing a mask, not because of COVID-19, because they're not breathing in flu and other bacteria, all these things that they should have an immunity to. I use this example. I say, imagine if we went down to Mexico and told everybody stop drinking your water. It wouldn't take more than a decade before you would have people that cannot drink any water anymore. They're no longer acclimated to their environment. We are moving into a place where we're about to turn ourselves into aliens on our own planet. If we are not breathing our air on a constant basis, we will get to a place where we have to wear a helmet everywhere we go. That may be a dream of Fauci's. It may be a dream of Bill Gates, but I doubt it's a dream of any of your friends or family. And so these things, we use these tools and take them into these politicians. These are simple concepts that are much more, available throughout media. We got to use these tools in a way and fight like we have never fought before, because the battle has been drawn, right? We are in them. Let's be clear. I mean, I've been told from the beginning, Del, this is a marathon, not a sprint. I'm sorry. We are on the final battlefront.
Yeah.
We are either going to see in our life the next few years a total takeover of our lives, or we've won. I say we go.
Well, starting with the COVID vaccine in your conversation is a great place to start, because that's common ground for everybody.
Exactly.
You're right, and probably half the country doesn't want it to be mandated. They're not sure they're going to take it. So you come up with talking points that are going to kind of reach them on that level. The vaccine might only work like the flu shot. Do you get a flu shot? No. Well, the COVID vaccine might be similar. It might, at best, it might just reduce the severity of your COVID symptoms, but it might not prevent you catching it and spreading it, just like the flu shot doesn't prevent that. So it's a great place to start, because you got to find that common ground. So I think you walk up to anybody and you ask, what do you think about childhood vaccines? They'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You walk up to anybody and say, oh, what do you think about the COVID vaccine that was coming out? They're like, oh yeah, well, here's my opinion. They're happy to talk about it. So it's a great place to start the conversation. And your goal of that first conversation is never to convince anybody. Something you've always said, your goal of any first conversation is to make a friend, make a new friend, make a connection personally with that person, so you can then exchange information and follow up and become part of their social group. So then over the months and years, your life starts to kind of be intertwined with their life, and then you can slowly have those conversations that steer towards childhood vaccines and informed consent.
Yeah, don't race there. I mean, my
don't
lesson would be, don't
right.
race to move the COVID understanding into childhood vaccines. Take your time.
Right.
Give them all the rope they need with COVID vaccines to really get themselves. And then when they recognize how dangerous this is, then we can start talking about, well, now let's start looking at what else you can accept.
But you said, where do we go from here? I mean, ultimately, the thing people need to keep doing, in my opinion, is keep getting out and meeting in person. Keep creating the gatherings, the rallies, the demonstrations. Don't be bullied into silence during this time. More than ever, this is the time we actually do have to come together. We have to create the meetings, the congregations. We need to have power in the community. We need to stay motivated, but we also have to have that exchange of information, and you can't really do that effectively over your phone or through social media. We can't be afraid to come together. There's power in that. And whether that's a small group showing up to the Capitol, whether that's groups going to your legislators, whether that's a group near the beach doing a reopen rally and discussing what's going on with our schools staying closed, we have to keep coming together. Don't be afraid. Don't let them make you afraid to get together, because that's the only place we have power. It's with each other. And so in-person advocacy, in my opinion, is where it's at.
And even if we can't advocate, right now our state capitol is closed, which has been very frustrating, but something we've been focusing on at Texans for Vaccine Choice is just the community gathering, which is why we are hosting the open house tonight and the farm play day tomorrow. And we just felt so compelled that every individual member or advocate that we would invite up into this office, they would just come in, and everybody in this office can attest to, they would have this moment where they just gave the weight of the world to just be lifted off their shoulders and sit down and connect with people. And it was like this wild trend that we saw. And that's why ultimately we decided we need to have a gathering. We need to get our friends together and we need to create that community because our children and our families and our future so desperately need it. Y'all have been rocking down in Austin as far as creating that community. You know, I left Austin a couple of years ago. But you made me a little bit like, oh man, if I was down there, I could have, you know, great community in person.
It's amazing. It's really quite amazing the amount of people that I did just last night at dinner with 20 people that most everyone would recognize. And none of us called each other and said, let's go to Austin. We've all just arrived there. There's a mecca, there's an energy coming here. We were just talking about this earlier. I don't know that it means that Texas is safe. What I think is this is going to be the battle line.
Yeah.
This is where the line has to be held. I didn't come here to hide. I came to Texas to say we have got to hold Texas. If we lose Texas, we lose America. If we lose America, we lose the world. This is where it's happening. And there are communities. We're talking about building communities, you know, where we all actually start having values around neighborhoods and things like that. So I think it's something that people should be thinking about, you know. If people are looking to run from New York, run from California, you have Texans for Vaccine Choice doing a brilliant job. I'm here. Lots of people are here to make a difference and really represent to the country and the world what medical freedom really means and what that value is. And trust me, more and more, I don't care if you're a Democrat, you hate what's happening to you in California. Absolutely. You can't breathe the air. You can't walk around freely. That's going to get more and more old and more terrifying. So these are great times. These are great issues. But and I just want to say, you said, you know, people are feeling the weight of the world. It's true. And I know that we all thought this election went really smoothly and got what we wanted. Somehow that weight is lifted. But when you said that, it's not that you come to something like this or come to Texas for Vaccine Choice or any of these, you know, the high wire so that the weight is lifted. What you recognize, it's like, remember that game when you were a kid and you like lift the person with like 2 fingers? If we all do this together, that way of the world, we can throw it up from the ceiling.
Absolutely.
We've got to do it together.
Absolutely. Well, a few closing remarks because I could just go on all day. I love where this discussion went. It was a completely different direction than we had anticipated, but that's what I wanted. I wanted the candid conversation. Here at Texans for Vaccine Choice, we actually have created a Welcome to Texas guide that we have on our website. We actually have real estate agents located all across the state of Texas who are welcoming medical refugees to the state of Texas, primarily California and New York, but not exclusively from there. That's how many people are coming to this great state. And we love to poke fun at California. We love to kind of, you know, we have that little thing going back and forth with us, but the truth is that the families moving here have been so uplifting to us, so supportive, so happy to be here, and I believe are going to be crucial in our advocacy to wake up these citizens of Texas who don't realize what is lying ahead if we don't change
Because they haven't seen it.
They haven't seen it. We have people here who have seen it, who have been there, who have done that. So I want you to go to TexansForVaccineChoice.com and find our Welcome to Texas guide if you are relocating, and reach out to us so we can help get you stationed in the right place. Closing remarks from this amazing panel. Anybody here?
Before, do you have anything to say? Come on, Dr. Bob.
We've been talking all day.
I know, we sure have. I just want to, thank everybody. I'm so happy that everybody is getting involved in stuff like this, and we have to, again, keep the information flowing and the conversations happening and the data. Look through the data. Don't be afraid to jump into this just because I get a lot of moms saying, well, who am I to get involved in this? And people are underestimating their own powers and abilities to be a part and be significant and be a help and be a contributor. So, if you care about your kids, which we know you do, that's why you're here, step it up to the next level. This doesn't happen because a handful of people get to do all the work for you. Everybody has to work at it. Medical freedom is not free. Like, we have to work at preserving that. And so don't look at it like you're gonna move to Texas and you're done. Now that you got here, like, whoo, I'm safe, I'm out of California. It's gotta be more like, I'm here, and now what can I do? And I know you guys work really hard, but I'd say that in California, we've got a lot of people not working very hard, but they're very upset, but they're not working hard. So you have to do the work, and everybody has to do it. And gosh, that makes everybody else's job so much easier when you have the support of other people. So advocacy takes work, and it takes time and energy, but it's worth it in the end, and we need everybody.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, thank you so much for being here. Mr. Bigtree, the fact that you drove up to be here today.
I wouldn't miss it.
Oh, I mean-
Congratulations. What amazing things. This deck out here I was just sitting on. Really fabulous. You deserve this, and the work you're going to do and how important you're going to be to this. I'm glad you have space now that you can all get this work done. Keep it up.
Isn't it exciting?
It's
And
very
can you believe that it was just a few years ago, I was on a panel, my first live, that was, I don't know who signed me up for that. That was a bad idea. But we did it.
Everybody has their first
Everyone
time.
And you've always been so supportive of the moms of this movement. You've been so supportive, and to see all of this happen, and you know that you've been there every step of the way, we just appreciate you. We're so glad you're in Texas.
Well, I appreciate the warrior moms around this country and the world. That will be the only reason we got to the point we're at now. And it's one of the beautiful things to see the fathers finally starting to arrive. The warrior dads are showing up. So it's a really exciting time. I just want to tell people, this is going to be a very difficult week, maybe several weeks, months.
Yeah.
Everything we're going through, recognize you're not alone. We're all feeling that emotion together, and know that I really, truly believe, know that everything that happens is happening as it should be. You've got to do your job.
Amen. And with that, we close. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, you two.
Yeah, I know. You do so well.